everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about a pretty interesting subject. We submitted all our paperwork for temporary residency a little while ago, and we're going to be talking about finally getting that all done and everything. So
yeah, it's been going on a month since we got submitted.
something like that.
We then, but like right after we got submitted, it was kind of coming in the Christmas, New Year's stretch there. And then we got sick partway in there, and then had some other stuff go on that we had to get done. It threw everything for a loop. So this recap is way overdue. We talked previously about how in our first few weeks here we had to go do a bunch of medical tests, get all the paperwork done. Our lawyer's office then, they filled out all the application, helped us get all the documents in a row, helped us get the appointment set up, because we then had to go to the immigration center at Sakharova, which is, if not even in Moscow. Like, I actually had to get like a taxi ride. It was like an hour and a half to get there, or something like that.
Because you had 2 hours, depends on when you're going.
It is a bit of a pain to get out there and do it and all, but it seems like most of the people I've heard of who have done any of like the temporary residence or even long-term residence here in Moscow, where they've done it through Moscow, you end up having to make that trek out there, submit those documents and all that. So it's kind of we could jokingly say we've kind of gone to the infamous place, because it's overhyped, but I did have a lot of people telling me how it's like, oh yeah, it's such a pain to go out there, and then things go wrong, and then you have to go back, and it had a reputation, but I won't lie, when we got there, it really was. And I'm not just trying to be complimentary. It was relatively nice relative to what I was used to. It was kind of, in some ways, it was less stressful than doing some of the medical paperwork, just because it felt more like what I was used to. It kind of felt like a DMV or something like that in the U.S., just bigger and nicer, somewhat newer building than I'm used to for most DMVs, because you could tell they've been doing some remodeling or something in there, it looks like. But it felt a little bit more like you could just sort of figure it out yourself. And then got there, and then it had like, monitors up there. You get a number, you go to this place, do that place. So as long as you paid attention, it was much more self-explanatory than doing the medical stuff. So in some ways, it was actually less stressful. So anyway, we had to split it up and go separately.
That was the really stressful part for me.
They had told us before coming, when we signed up for the appointment, we couldn't bring the kids. So I went, it was like bright and early Monday morning. The appointment was at like 8:15, something like that. So yeah, I had to get up at like 5 something, leave by, have my taxi pick me up at 6. Got there, you stand around with this big crowd of people all waiting, because really the whole place hasn't even opened up yet. So we're all just standing outside the gate, just kind of waiting, and then they eventually make the announcement, you come in. So I went the first day, and I took the paperwork for myself and the kids. So I was doing the paperwork for 4 people. And then Beth was going to go the next morning, and I was just going to stay with the kids that morning, and she would go for her own paperwork. The place I had to go to didn't have nearly as big a line of people. Some of the places I went by had like massive lines where it looks like you'd had to stand out in the cold for like an hour just to get in the building. Mine was just simple. I had the paperwork from making the reservation, went in, they checked who I was, all that. Then you go to the big waiting room. You have to have all your paperwork together, filled out with this application, the medical records for our children, copies of like their birth certificates, all that kind of stuff, translation of our passports, copies of our registration, just all the documents. Lawyer's office, they met with us afternoon, and we went through the packets to make sure all the packets had all the things in them. But when you get there, you kind of go through 2 phases. Give the documents the first phase of it. They go over everything, make sure all the documents are there. And then they kind of hand it off to a second office that then kind of takes that they've looked at the documents, I think, and then they approve it, basically. Really only had to wait a few minutes. Went to the first window. The person's like, oh, wait, you got 4 people? You're going to go to this window. I honestly, legitimately think the person just saw how much it was and didn't want to have to handle 4 people at once, and then dumped it off on her colleague. So I go there, sit a minute, and I come over to this other window. The guy's kind of like, why are you here? I'm like, the person over there told me to come to your window. And he's just kind of like, okay. And so I sit down, start going through it. It was interesting, because I do think a big part of what some people don't like about going out there is just everything needs to be correct, and you don't want to have to make that massive trip out there a second time. And I think it's pretty normal for things to not be correct the first time. So I give the documents to the guy. what is like my first packet. I got like 4 packets, So he starts going through it. He looks for like a minute or so. First couple minutes starts going through it, and this looks at me and goes, "So this is like your second or third, this is a repeat trip, right?" I'm like, no, that's my first time. He's like, "Oh, okay." And goes back through it, starts going through it again, and gets about 5 or 10 minutes through. He's gone through all of mine, looking over it, starts looking through one of the kids' packets as well. Finally just stops, looks at me and goes, "Did you fill this out yourself?" I was like, no. I got a lawyer to do that. I wasn't touching that. There's no way this would have been good. So he looks at me and goes, "Okay, that makes a lot more sense." He outright looks suspicious, like he was trying to figure out if there's something wrong here. Yeah. So he just looks at me and goes, "Yeah, this is like way too good." I was in shock. This was weird, Yeah. And so that was kudos for our lawyer's office.
And this is why if you come to Russia to do this process, it's worth the money to pay for an immigration lawyer.
And then you have to pay like an application fee. Mm-hmm. Sends me off to this like kiosk, and he basically just told me, "Go over there. I'll just wait for you." The kiosks are not that one if you don't speak Russian, and I even speak some Russian, but even speaking some Russian, it was still kind of like, what? So that one, if you were to be going through the process as someone who doesn't speak that much Russian, just grab one of the people that's there. There were some people there who were helping, and so I honestly was kind of like, this is confusing. Grab one of me, just basically step me straight through the whole process. So anyway, so you pay the application fee, come back. He then finishes off everything. He's done with his part. He keeps all your documents, and then he took them and basically took them to the other office, which is like just connected to the same waiting room where you're sitting. So you just kind of go back and sit and wait in the same place, looking at the original screen with your number from when you first got there that morning. Mm-hmm. I then meet with the second office, who's basically received the documents from the first part and are approving it. And that person tells me, "Okay, fine. You need to go now get fingerprinted for that part of the process. Follow signs till I find a place that says fingerprints. Look for a screen. There's my number again." They fingerprint you. And then, that also threw them for a loop because they don't fingerprint the super little kids. And I had paperwork for 3 little kids. And they're like, "Well, there's just one of you." So that person had to like call the office, and they had to tell them, no, it's okay. It's 3 little kids. It's fine. But then they fingerprint me, and then they sent me back to that same kiosk because you also have to pay the fee for fingerprinting, which I think it wasn't that expensive. It was like a few bucks. Then you have to come back to the fingerprinting person, bring them the receipt to show that you paid for it, and then they give you like a document showing that you did get fingerprinted. Yeah. You take that document back to the inspector person, that stage 2 person. So I bring it back to that person. That person then looks at it as like, "Okay, you've now been fingerprinted. I got all the documents from stage 1. I've now approved them." And then that was pretty much it. They also gave me this green card showing that I had gotten through this. It had my picture on it and all. Yeah. So they gave you that. And then they also gave me a piece of paper for each of the applications, so basically a confirmation that it had been successfully submitted. And then you use it when it gets processed and you get approved. You take those with you. That process for me was like 7.5 hours because I got there at like 7:45 and I was there till the afternoon. Yeah, it was
a long day. It was a very long day.
I did a weird modified. I took a taxi to just the southern end of Moscow to the nearest metro station to cut on the taxi costs because I'm cheap, and then I just hopped off and took the nearest and then took the metro home. Yeah. So I mean, the process really was like, I've heard the horror stories, but using a lawyer that had all the paperwork lined up so everything was correct. Right. It was actually really nice. Like I was actually very surprised, especially my phase 1 person that I spent so long with. Like he was stone faced when I walked up, and by halfway through, he was actually like cracking jokes and asking me about like, "Oh, how is it in Russia? Oh, you're coming from the U.S. How is it there? There versus here." He was out like friendly. The process, as long as you had like a lawyer or something doing the paperwork, was actually pretty good. Yeah. I actually thought Sakharova was one of the easier things to actually deal with because as long as you have your number and somebody told you what you were doing ahead of time, as long as you had a brain and could recognize basic pattern recognition and someone told you what to expect, you could do it even with limited Russian. That was the nice thing. It was very structured. And then for you, your experience?
So I got up really early in the morning, and same thing as Andrew, took a taxi to Zagreb. And thankfully, Andrew gave me a blow-by-blow explanation of exactly where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. So that really, really helped, because I won't lie, he's a lot better at figuring out situations than I am. And so I think for me, I would have been more confused. I agree, it's very organized. So it's one of those things where, yeah, most people would be able to figure it out. Just I was under a lot of stress. So it was really helpful to kind of have his full explanation of what I was doing, where I was going, especially the doorways. I found the doorways to be a little confusing at first. But the biggest thing is just follow the crowd of people. Follow the crowd of people and know what doorway, like technically the name of your doorway, and follow the crowd of people, and generally speaking, you will get to the right place. So when I got there, same thing as Andrew, I noticed it was very, very modern, very like one of the nicer buildings we'd been to in this whole process, actually. And
at least the section we were in was. I can't answer for the rest of it because it was
huge.
huge. There were a lot of buildings there. The section we were in was nice, though.
So I went in and kind of just went through the same process that he did. And thankfully, because I only had the paperwork for one person, I got out in 3 hours. Actually, a little under 3 hours, whereas he had to stay.
It was like 2 or 2.5. It was ridiculous.
It was like 2.5. And then I think
you were home for lunch.
I
got home for dinner.
That's true. And I also... Andrew was cheap and he went to the metro. I was expensive and I got a taxi home. So basically, with Zagreb, if you have a lawyer who actually knows what he's doing and does a good job with everything, then it's not going to be as terrifying an experience overall. People there were, they were bureaucrats, but people there were helpful and understanding. They weren't out to get you. I didn't get that feeling at all. I got the feeling that they were just doing their job, very serious about their job, doing their job, making sure everything was correct. But if you had everything correct, then my last person was a lady, and very much again, very stone-faced, didn't smile at all. And when she handed me that paper and that little green card, she then, I looked at her and I was like, in Russian, said, "Это всё?" And she looked at me and she smiled at me. She said, "That's всё?"
That's all.
Like,
yep.
She literally just smiled at me. It was just like, "Yes, that's all." And I double checked. I was like, "Is it everything?" And she's like, "Yes, that's everything." And she literally was smiling when she was saying that. I was like, not what I expected. It was such a happy feeling when I got that paperwork and I was able to send Andrew a picture and say, "Hey, I got through, I got done, everything's fine."
And to clarify on this one, that has been the thing where, like with the medical stuff, there are different things where someone from the lawyer's office was actually able to meet us and help us.
Mm-hmm.
This, as it stands, at least currently right now, I think by law they're saying is like it pretty much just, it has to be you going on your own behalf. Yeah. So they couldn't send anyone with us as of at least the time we were doing this. So that's the other thing that kind of scares people is there will be people coming in and they might be coming in trying with an immigration lawyer or something like that, and they can kind of hold your hand through a lot of it. You might not speak Russian very well. They can still kind of help you with the medical tests and things like that. But with this one, this is kind of, you got to go solo. But that was where I was actually surprised. As long as the paperwork's in order, someone kind of gives you that prep talk and just talks through with you, this is what to expect, this is where you're going, which admittedly the person from our lawyer's office, she went over it with me. With all that in mind, it really wasn't that bad. But it was decently self-explanatory. Like, it was doable, even with very minimal Russian. So that is encouraging for anyone who's coming in and doesn't have as much of the background. It was definitely doable. So, all right, it's praise the Lord, we got through that. We were so thankful. Had to say some prayers of thanksgiving to have it all over, done, off our plates.
Yeah. So now it's just we're waiting for.
Yep. Now in the waiting period to hopefully get approved and get that in, and 5,000 more things to do, but at least this part of the checklist is the waiting part, so we don't have to feel like we're behind on doing something.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe, and share the video. Check our links down below. Our immigration lawyer is Timur, and you will find all his information down below, as well as our email address in case you have any non-lawyer questions. We cannot offer legal advice, but we can offer,
Yep. All we can do is share what our experience was.
Share our experience, yeah. If you want legal advice, go to Timur. Also, you will find down there our Telegram channel, our Boosty, and our channel membership in case you want to support the channel. One of the biggest ways you can support the channel is by subscribing and liking and helping the algorithm.
Share the videos.
Share the videos, yeah. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you again very, very soon. So.